This is Amy Laura Hall reporting from Durham, North Carolina, and I am going to be reading a second installment of my fourth book, Laughing at the Devil, Seeing the World with Julian of Norwich. Here is the cover of my fourth book, Laughing at the Devil. And now I'm going to read from about page 5, if you start from the beginning, to wherever I get to before my dogs start barking so loudly I can't keep reading. I teach ethics, capital E, at a prestigious secular university, where an ethicist worth her salt cannot offer dressed up academic platitudes about what is ethically wholesome, or what is ethically legal, or what is considered moral to some universal judge of clean living. I cannot evade the hardest questions about the world around me or about Jesus. If I do not ask a bewildering question about ethics and God, students will call me out as giving too simple an account of their own world. I am also a mother. Both of my daughters live with the stigma of a broken home, a phrase that is still used in North Carolina by both older and young adults who grew up with a simple vision of wholeness. The brokenness my daughters knew before our home was officially broken has left me with recurrent questions about the possibility of love. Julian's writings have helped me not to give up on either the most unbearable sorts of truths or on Jesus as truth. And I want to be clear there, I'm not making that simple. Jesus and I are barely on speaking terms. Julian has helped me listen to the hardest questions coming at me and the most painful questions coming from within me. During times that have seemed to me and to many other people around me to be nothing short of apocalyptic, Julian has helped me resist running away from reality. And a word I just used, apocalyptic. If you want more help thinking through that, just email me and I'll try to explain that. But I lived through the Reagan era. This is not in this section, but I'm now ad-libbing. I'm going off script. But during the Reagan era, I was not sure I was going to be able to survive what was then called mutually assured destruction. MAD was the plan. It was the American Grand Strategy Plan for geopolitics. So yeah, I've lived through apocalyptic times. I was a teenager in the 1980s. During times that have seemed to me and to many other people around me to be nothing short of apocalyptic, Julian has helped me resist running away from reality. I came to Julian by accident. You may be reading this book because you already love Julian of Norwich. I first read her revelations of divine love in a hurry and with impatience. It was 1999 and I had just started my position as a new teacher at Duke. I was teaching a large Introduction to Christian Ethics class at Duke Divinity School, and I did not have a single woman on the list of readings from the classics. I I don't even know how to explain why that's the case in a short video, but I could talk about that another time. A colleague, when I was asking, who should I include? Surely there's a woman to include in the classics, said, you should read Julian of Norwich. When I looked puzzled, he said something like, you know her. She wrote, all shall be well. All shall be well. All manner of things shall be well. No, I'd never heard of her, and she sounded stupid. All shall be well? I had heard too many Christians say some version of all things work for good for those who endure misery. To people who needed a friend just to sit with them in silence. And I'll go off script again and say that that's a reference to the book of Job. The book of Job, J-O-B, is the transliteration from the Hebrew. That's the translation, whatever you need, from the Hebrew. Just don't be like Job's friends. Sit with them in silence and do not say something like, all things work for good for those who endure misery. I had also seen, I'm going back on script, I'm still now reading my book. I had also seen all is well language used like a Jedi or maybe Sith mind trick on people who were aggrieved and grieving. All is well, and God knows what is good. So what you are grieving or raging against is not worth all of those tears or all of that rage. No, thank you. I had heard this language, all shall be well, before. No more of that soporific crap for me. Soporific, S-O-P-O-R-I-F-I-C. Soporific crap for me. But Julian's name kept coming up as a crucial theologian to read and to teach. I read Revelations of Divine Love while trying hard to perform openness and grace for those around me at work and in my new hometown of Durham, North Carolina. This, while I was trying to convey a message of joy in the midst of chaos. That chaos was, in fact, a recurrence of abuse in my own home. In this state of intimidation, scrutiny, and almost unbearable fragility, Julian became my lodestar. She was my focal point as I tried to twirl with a semblance of grace on the stage that was and still is my life. This book is in part a testimony of how the visions of a courageous woman can transform a setting of dread into a call to courage. All Shall Be Well became, for me, a refusal of intimidation, scrutiny, and shame. Julian helped me to look at even the most terrifying truth of my own personal life and trust in the love of God. I have found that Julian's visions resonate even with readers who have not grown up Christian. Her words about hope and love can speak to people who are privy to secular messages of despair, despondency, competition, and straight-up hate. Images in Better Homes and Gardens recommend ways to have better homes and gardens. Cosmopolitan offers unique tricks to make sure a woman is not alone or disappointing on a Saturday night. Men's Health shows men how to achieve a configuration on their abdominals known as a six-pack, while also advising them how to choose or even make the best craft beer. Television viewers in the United States view high-end fights for survival and fitness on The Sopranos or Game of Thrones, and even more popular, meaning more seen, literal fights for scarce goods on The Price is Right, which, yes, is still a thing, and fight nights promoted by Ultimate Fighting Championship, that's UFC, otherwise known as cage fighting. Julian has helped me to diagnose and counter such subtle and overt calls to see the world as a competition for scarce resources. For some Christian readers, her visions powerfully counter a particular form of Christian faith that manipulates anxiety to quicken obedience and compliance. This medieval anchorite, writing with courage when Christianity and political hierarchy were intertwined to convince people to shut up and stay in their place, can speak across centuries to embolden Christians who have been privy to a similarly toxic blend of religion and politics today. Writers and speakers in the United States continue to use Christian language to intimidate and to shame. Julian's visions offer a hearty, from the heart, rebuttal of this use for Christians and for non-Christians who must navigate a political scene where Christian language is used to scare people. Preachers showcased by major media outlets too often speak a false gospel of obedience and order, an isolating message of individual responsibility or some combination of a false gospel and individual responsibility. Obey, and also you're singularly responsible. It's bull caca. That's me going off script. Commentators like the New York Times columnist David Brooks reinforce these messages, diagnosing humanity as inherently narcissistic and prescribing selflessness for everyone, as if prescribing fluoride in water. Julian saw visions of Jesus' blood coming to her and for her with no intermediary during the same decade when, customarily, only priests received the cup of blessing, the blood, and the bread or body was parceled out according to a strict division of who was above whom in an aristocratic feudal feudal system. Her resultant laughter is a testimony today, still today, against a summons to purifying humiliation and obedience. Julian's visions of God's familiarity and love counter messages of austerity and obeisance to hierarchical ordering. And she wrote with an intention of being read by real people from a position of kinship rather than superiority. Nicholas Watson and Jacqueline Jenkins, in 2006, edited a volume on Julian that provides her original writings in Middle English and copious notes on the particular words and historical context of her writings. In their introduction to the volume that they edited, they write, "A revelation," meaning her long text, "is a work with no real precedent." And here I'm quoting. I'll go back and I'll make sure I am clear who I'm quoting. So I'm quoting Nicholas Watson and Jacqueline Jenkins in their 2006 edited volume. Quote, "A revelation is a work," okay, gotta go back. So I explained this, I think, in the first segment of this YouTube series. But so Julian of Norwich's writings, she wrote down her initial impressions of what she'd seen, and that's referred to as the short text, and her long text is the text that she took decades to think about and write. And in this part of Nicholas Watson and Jacqueline Jenkins's volume, they're referring in this quote to her long text. Okay. Quote, "A revelation," meaning the long text, "is a work with no real precedent," meaning no precedent, meaning no, they're saying, in Watson and Jenkins are saying that they don't think there is a precedent that we know of. And there were certainly, like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to say certainly, but I would think there were probably verbal precedents, but that's my own thought on how Christianity might have worked at that time in the medieval period. But quote, "A revelation," meaning the long text, "is a work with no real precedent," precedent, "a speculative vernacular theology, not modeled on earlier texts, but structured as a prolonged investigation into the divine, whose prophetic goal is to birth a new understanding of human living into the world and of the nature of God in God's interactions with the world, not just for theologians, but for everyone." That's from page 3 of their introduction to their volume, 2006 volume. I love that so much. What Watson and Jenkins mean by a speculative vernacular theology is this: Julian was willing to ask questions that a woman was not supposed to ask. In fact, only men trained in theology at Oxford or Cambridge were considered qualified to ask the questions she asked. Julian was speculative in that she speculated. She asked questions. And she wrote in the vernacular, meaning she wrote in English, the language people not trained at Oxford or Cambridge spoke to one another about everyday things. Julian of Norwich was a churchwoman and a prophet who wanted people to catch sight of what she saw and to become curious about what it meant that God told her that God's meaning is always and for eternity love. She wanted people to think, see, sorrow, and laugh at the devil with her. This is my invitation in my own vernacular to join in this vision.